Why hello there, and welcome to today's video. For today's video, we are actually building a community lot. As some of you may know, there was a recent update for The Sims where platforms were introduced into the game. So there was foundation, but not platforms. The difference is that foundations is basically to lift everything up, whereas with platforms, you can actually make like a sunken living room or you can stack them on top of each other. So in this case, I actually got in, and the first thing you saw was me playing around with how platforms actually worked, because I wasn't even sure on how they actually worked. I just knew they were in the game, and there's still a lot of things I want to try out with platforms. So one of the first things that I did was I noticed that you could layer platforms, basically making steps. So if it looks like a sim can step on it, they probably can. So in this case, like one tile high or one increment high, Sims can definitely walk up that. So I used that to my advantage, and I realized as well that they had curved platforms as well. So what I did was I created steps, and that basically determined what the whole build was going to be. I decided right away I'm gonna make a museum. The steps were gonna be there, no questions asked. And then after that, it was a matter of what do I actually like with these steps. So I found the door that I'm gonna put at the front of the building, and that is what determined the rest of the build. I didn't want to add white windows, I wanted them to be the same color as the door. And then after that, it was a matter of okay, so what is a paint going to look like then? I wanted brick that looked old. I would have preferred lighter brick, but with lighter brick, the grout looks too new, and I didn't like that. So we ended up going with this color scheme, and then after that, the second thing that I wanted to do, which was what I actually went into once I learned about the platforms, I wanted to make stairs that were actually staggered that had a proper landing. The issue with this, as I came to find out soon enough, which I don't actually have it on video because I didn't realize this until I tested the building all the way at the end. But don't worry, the build is completely usable, everything is accessible. But what I didn't realize at the moment was, first of all, it was a pain to get rid of the ceiling on the floor below. So since it wasn't precisely like a 2 by 2 by 2, I guess you could say, it was like a 3 by 2 by 2, that meant that there was going to be a bit of ceiling being built at the top of it, and I didn't want that since it wasn't going to work out. Which, by the way, let me just preface this, the first like half of the video is all me figuring out layouts. I wanted to keep this in so you guys can feel my struggle trying to get this to look decent, but that's besides the point. The staircase was what was driving me insane. So, first of all, it was the issue with the roofing, and always right after a new update comes out, I feel like building in general gets a little wonky, but I was eventually able to get it, and what I didn't realize at the time was there's obviously height restrictions when building platforms. So an adult sim can't go to the same places that a toddler can, for example. So when I first tried testing out this build, my sims actually couldn't get to the second floor. They were stuck on the first floor. So that was a fun part to figure out. Something else that came out in this update was actually new wall height. So half walls have a whole heap of heights now, which are designed to go along with the platforms. So if you have like a one increment high platform, you have a wall that can actually cover it as well. So I decided to use those all the way on the roof, which there's a sitting area on the roof where I also put some chess tables at the end, but there's also a roof on that roof. I guess you could say it that way. And after that, it was just a matter of figuring out how to decorate everything. I wanted it to look like an actual museum, where in museums, or at least museums I've been to, there tends to be a lot of light, especially in art sections. There are some sections as well that are completely covered, they are completely controlled lighting, but I didn't really have much space to play around with that if I wanted to include bathrooms here, mainly because the staircase took such a big space. I could have made this a lot bigger. I built this on a 40 by 30 and I wanted it to be 30 by 30 compatible. So if you have a 30 by 30 lot that you want to put a community lot in, this museum will actually fit. because the way that I do the outside of the museum, it's gonna basically cut off the back end of it. And as a 40 by 40, I wanted to leave it as you could have a wedding venue at the back, for example, or you could have a bit of a park at the back. I left it more as a flex space since I felt like some people weren't going to be happy that there isn't a computer on this lot, for example. So there's definitely places that you can still build onto if you really wanted to. The other thing that was really grinding my gears while building this, I wanted to put fencing around some of the sculptures and the statues, since I felt like that is what a museum would actually have. They would have a restricted area where people can't actually go into to protect the art, but I really wasn't having a good time with it since every time that I got it all the way to the wall, the roof would start clipping in again. So that was a lot of placing and then moving and then just playing around with a lot of different stuff while building. So the museum in general is technically 4 stories high. The fourth story is the sitting area that I had mentioned all the way at the top. But the first 2 floors, they are actually what I would consider the museumy part of the museum. There's art everywhere. The third floor, however, is where I thought maybe there's a studio here. Maybe that's where they assess their art. Maybe that's where they get some artists to make some new pieces. So it's a employee area slash studio. Let's call it that. And yeah, the rest of it, it just took me a long time in general since I had a lot of issues with the clipping that I had mentioned, particularly with the roof. It wasn't like this had a complicated roof or anything. I just thought I could get away without having to make a million roof pieces. And clearly the game was like, no, you don't get to do that. And besides that, it was just like clipping through the walls. And I could have changed that by changing the roof trim since the roof itself already wasn't clipping into the building. But I really didn't want to go that route since I liked the trim that the roof already had. Something I noticed the other day in my gallery is that a lot of my buildings are actually very brown, and I believe that's because I used a lot more brick than I thought, and that really surprised me since I never pegged myself as more of a brick person. I actually do like siding better since you can change some of the colors. I have nothing against some bricks, but I'm more of a stone in general. So I like big chunky stones in an IRL house, but I feel like on Sims, it doesn't fit every house. With that, I actually noticed that a lot of them were being very brown, and I was thinking the next building I do is gonna be a lot brighter. Lo and behold, we have a converted old manor that is now a museum that has original brick and maybe original windows and doors. So I thought that was pretty funny once I realized what I was building. But at the same time, I really like the museum and I like it, I'll say it, a lot more than the museums that come with the game already. After that, I got into my apparently signature move of putting plants everywhere and vines to make it look like there's overgrowth and that it's really old. Does that actually work? Probably not, but I like the look of it, so I went ahead with it. So for the outside too, I was thinking, well, this is probably a community space. It's not somewhere that it's like there's a house and it's full of grass. I don't think I've ever seen a museum that has grass all over it or any community lot in general, except maybe a park. So I decided to put some tiles down. I was looking forever for this tile in particular since the tile blocks actually seem to be bigger than they actually are. And I really like that because it made it look more like it is part of the world since the sidewalk that is in the world already is actually bigger than the sidewalk that you can put down. So I went ahead with that, and then what I did was I cut out the tile and I put a tree there, and I thought I really like this. So on the outside, I ended up doing kind of like a trees around the world type of feel, and that's why there's a whole bunch of trees and different types of trees. But anyways, we're getting to the end of the video, and I want to thank everyone so much for watching today. Please do let me know what you think down in the comments below. Let me know what you'd like me to try out next, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good weekend.